The woman who knocked on our door at 9 p.m. wasn't wearing any pants. That wasn't the part that scared me. The part that scared me was what the deputy asked after he watched the tape. He rewound it twice. Then he looked at me and said, "Did she ask if he was still inside?" I didn't understand the question. I didn't understand why he already had a question. A woman shows up at your door barefoot and half-dressed on a Tuesday night in September. The responding officer should be asking what happened to her, where she came from, whether she needs an ambulance. Deputy Briggs didn't ask any of those things. He asked about a specific phrase, like he'd heard it before. That was 26 years ago. I was 26. My wife Jenny and I had been married for 9 months. We'd closed on the house in May. A 2-bedroom ranch on Spruce Flat Road, 11 miles south of Warrenton, Oregon. The house cost us $87,000. I was running cable for the county. Jenny was temping at a dental office in Astoria. We were ordinary people who had no business being part of whatever this is. I need to tell you what happened. All of it. Because 3 weeks ago, it started again. September 19th, 2000. A Tuesday. Jenny was on the couch watching something. I was in the kitchen drying the last pot from dinner. It was the kind of night where the fog sits so low against the coast that you stop being able to tell where the road ends and the tree line starts. Quiet. Normal quiet. The knock came at 9 sharp. Not a pounding, not urgent. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, like someone keeping time. Jenny got up and opened the door before I could put the pot down. That's the kind of thing you did back then. 11 miles from town, no neighbors within eyeshot. If someone knocks, you open the door because they probably need help. I came around the corner and saw Jenny standing in the doorway with the screen door pushed open. She was blocking most of my view, but I could see the woman's feet. Bare, clean, no dirt, no cuts, no signs she'd been walking on gravel in the dark. She was standing on the welcome mat like she'd been placed there. Jenny stepped aside, and I saw the rest of her. Mid-30s, light brown hair, shoulder length, not messy. She was wearing a gray pullover sweatshirt that went down to about mid-thigh. Nothing below that. No pants, no shorts, no shoes. But here's the thing. She didn't look like someone who'd been attacked or chased through the woods. Her sweatshirt was clean. Her hair was brushed. She looked like someone who'd gotten dressed in a hurry but had done it calmly. Her eyes were the problem. She was terrified, not crying, not shaking. Just that flat, wide-open look people get when the fear has been going on long enough to settle into something permanent. She looked past Jenny, past me, into the house, like she was searching the walls. Then she said something to Jenny. I didn't hear it clearly. I was still 10 feet back, and the fog was doing something to the sound that night. Jenny said, "What?" And the woman said it again, but by then she was already looking over her shoulder back toward the road. Jenny turned to me. She looked confused, not scared yet, just confused. She asked if he's still inside, Jenny said. I stepped past Jenny onto the porch. "Who? There's nobody here but us." The woman looked at me. She didn't answer. She looked at the exterior wall of the house and put her palm flat against the siding, held it there for about 3 seconds. Then she pulled her hand away and shook her head once. Small, like a doctor who's confirmed a diagnosis. "You should leave this house," she said. That's when I looked past her, down the driveway. Our driveway was gravel, about 40 yards long, running straight from the road to the carport. The motion light over the carport was on. The fog cut visibility to maybe 60 feet, and at the very edge of the light, where the gravel met the road, there was a man, standing, not moving, facing the house. I couldn't make out his face. Too far, too much fog. But I could see his posture, shoulders slightly forward, hands at his sides, head tilted maybe 2 degrees to the right. Not aggressive, not casual, patient. That's the word I keep coming back to. He was standing the way someone stands when they've been waiting a long time and are prepared to wait longer. "Hey!" I called out. Nothing. No response. No movement. I looked back at the woman. "Is that who you're running from? You want me to call the police?" She wasn't looking at the man. She was looking at me. "He's not why I'm here," she said. "He's why you should leave." Jenny pulled the woman inside. I closed the door and locked it. Jenny brought her a blanket and a glass of water. I called 911 from the kitchen phone. Clatsop County Dispatch. I told them a woman showed up at my door in distress, partially clothed, possible male individual at the end of the driveway. While I was on the phone, I watched the woman through the kitchen doorway. She was sitting on our couch with the blanket around her shoulders. She wasn't drinking the water. She was looking at the wall behind the television, the way you'd look at a wall if you could hear something on the other side. Jenny sat next to her and asked her name. The woman said, "It doesn't matter." Jenny asked where she came from. The woman said, "The same place you're going to come from, if you stay." That sentence didn't mean anything to me at the time. It means everything now. Deputy Briggs arrived in 14 minutes. I met him at the door. He was mid-50s, heavy-set, calm in a way that was more practiced than natural. I walked him through what happened. He nodded at the right places, wrote nothing down. I told him about the man at the end of the driveway. He glanced toward the road and nodded again. I told him the woman was inside on the couch. He looked past me into the living room. The blanket was folded on the arm of the couch. The glass of water was full and sitting on the coffee table. The woman was gone. Jenny was standing in the hallway looking at the bathroom door, which was open and empty. "She was right there," Jenny said. "I went to get her a pair of sweatpants. That was 30 seconds ago." I checked the back door, locked from the inside. I checked the windows, closed. The front door had been in my line of sight the entire time I was talking to Briggs. She hadn't come past us. Deputy Briggs did not look surprised. He wrote something on his notepad, the first thing he'd written all night, and said, "You have a security system?" I did. The previous owner had installed a hardwired camera over the front door connected to a VCR in the hall closet. I'd never used it for anything, but I'd left the tape running because I kept forgetting to turn it off. Briggs asked to see the tape. I rewound it to 8:55 and hit play. The tape was grainy, black and white, but clear enough. At 9 p.m. exactly, the woman stepped into frame from the left side of the porch. She hadn't walked up the driveway. The motion light hadn't triggered before she appeared. She was just there, at the door, hand already raised to knock. She knocked 3 times. Jenny opened the door. They spoke. I appeared behind Jenny. The woman touched the wall. Briggs rewound it, watched it again. I saw him leaning close to the screen when the woman spoke to Jenny. The audio was bad, mostly static and wind, but you could hear fragments. Then he looked at me. Did she ask if he was still inside? That's what Jenny said she asked. Briggs nodded slowly. He ejected the tape, held it for a moment, then put it back. I'd hold on to that, he said. Then he paused at the door on his way out. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking past the carport into the fog. "If she comes back," he said, "don't invite her in. Just listen to what she says." He left. I stood in the doorway and watched his cruiser pull onto Spruce Flat Road. He didn't turn toward town. He turned south. Toward nothing. There's nothing south on that road for 6 miles. I didn't sleep that night. Jenny didn't either. We sat in the living room with the TV on mute, and we didn't talk about it because we didn't have any words that fit. I went back to the Clatsop County Sheriff's substation 3 days later, asked to speak with Deputy Briggs. The woman at the desk told me Briggs was out on patrol. I said I wanted to file a follow-up on the incident Tuesday night. She checked her records. "I don't have an incident logged for that address on the 19th, she said. I described it again. Woman at the door, man on the road. Briggs responded. She checked again. "There's no call record, no dispatch entry, and no incident report for your address that night." I asked when Briggs would be back. She said she couldn't give out schedule information. I left my phone number. Briggs never called. I started asking around. That's what you do when you're 26 and something doesn't make sense. You ask people. You don't even know what you're looking for yet. You just start talking. I talked to Ed Calder, our nearest neighbor, about a mile north on Spruce Flat. I kept it casual. Asked if he'd ever had anyone show up at his door late at night. Ed said no. But his wife, Dorothy, heard me from the kitchen. She came to the doorway and said, "The Ortegas had that." My expression must have changed, because she sat down at the table and told me. The Ortegas lived in the house on the opposite side of Spruce Flat, half a mile south of us. They'd moved in around 1982. Sometime in '84, Dorothy thought it was late summer. Maria Ortega told Dorothy that a woman had come to their door one evening, barefoot, no pants, asked a strange question and then disappeared before the police arrived. "What question?" I asked. Dorothy looked at her hands. She asked if he was still inside. Maria didn't know what that meant. Neither did I. The Ortegas moved to Bend 4 months later, put the house on the market, and left within a week of listing it. Maria told Dorothy they just needed a change. But Dorothy said Maria wouldn't look at her when she said it. I asked if Dorothy knew of anyone else. She thought for a long time. "The Callahan place," she said. 77 or 78, before our time. But the story was around when we moved in. Same thing. A woman at the door. Middle of the night. Something about a man. That house had burned down in 1979. The Callahans relocated to California. Nobody ever rebuilt on that lot. 2 houses, same road, same description, same question, 16 years apart. I started driving. I talked to 4 more people over the next 2 weeks. A retired mail carrier in Warrenton who remembered hearing about the barefoot woman on Spruce Flat Road in the early 70s. A woman who ran a bait shop near the Youngs Bay Bridge, who said her mother had a similar story from the 60s, but wouldn't repeat it because she didn't like to talk about things she couldn't explain. Everyone described the same woman. Mid-30s, light brown hair, gray top, no pants, clean feet, calm voice, terrified eyes. Nobody ever saw her arrive. Nobody ever saw her leave. The Clatsop County Public Library had a microfiche archive of the Astoria Daily Budget, going back to 1941. I went there on a Saturday morning and started scrolling. It took me 4 hours to find the first one. October 7th, 1971, page 6. A two-paragraph brief under the headline, "Disturbance reported on coastal road south of Warrenton." A woman described as mid-30s, partially clothed, was reported on a residential property on Spruce Flat Road at approximately 9 p.m. Responding deputy noted the woman departed the property before contact could be established. Departed, like she walked away, like she had a car somewhere. I kept scrolling. August 19th, 67, police blotter. One line. Female mid-30s, no lower garments, reported at residence on Spruce Flat Road, refused to identify self, departed before transport. March 4th, 1962, same thing, same description, different deputy, same road, same time. I found 6 entries total, spanning from 1958 to 1984, 6 entries across 26 years. Everyone described the same woman. Everyone placed her on the same stretch of Spruce Flat Road. Everyone noted she vanished before she could be questioned or transported. In 26 years of appearances, the description never changed. Not once. Same age, same hair, same clothing, same clean bare feet. She never looked older. But one entry stopped me. The March 4th, 1962 report was longer than the others, 3 full sentences instead of 1, and unlike the rest, it included the responding deputy's name. Responding deputy R. Briggs. Deputy Briggs was mid-50s when he came to my house in 2000. That puts his birth around 1945. In 1962, he would have been 17 years old. Not a deputy, not even close. I told myself it was his father. Different Briggs. Happens all the time in small county departments. I checked later. The Clatsop County Sheriff's Office has employed 1 deputy with the surname Briggs in its entire recorded history. 1. Robert Briggs. Start date, 1989. No academy record before that year. No prior law enforcement employment in Oregon or any adjacent state. 1 R. Briggs. And his name is on a report from 27 years before he was hired. I leaned back from the microfiche machine and stared at the ceiling. The library was quiet. Outside, it was raining the way it always rains on the Oregon coast, slow and permanent. Then I started pulling property records. Every house on Spruce Flat Road where the woman had appeared, every single one, was built on a lot subdivided from the same original parcel. Clatsop County Assessor's Office. Parcel history. It took me a full day of driving between the library, the assessor's office, and the county recorder. This was 2000. You couldn't pull this up online. You had to sit in a plastic chair and wait for someone to bring you a folder. The original parcel was 314 acres of coastal land, purchased in 1923 by a man named Earl Foss, Norwegian immigrant, arrived in Astoria around 1920, married a woman named Ruth Lind in 1924. They built a homestead on the west end of the parcel, the end that faced the ocean, and lived there for 30 years. In 1953, Ruth Foss disappeared. She was 34 years old. The missing person report was filed on September 22nd, 1953, by Earl Foss himself. He told the sheriff she'd gone walking along the bluff trail and never came back. A search was conducted. 16 men, 4 days, nothing, no body, no clothing, no sign of a fall. The bluff trail was examined and found to be stable, no erosion, no collapse, no evidence of anything at all. The sheriff's report noted that Earl Foss was cooperative, but showed, and I'm reading the exact wording here, minimal emotional response relative to the circumstances. Ruth's body was never found. Earl was never charged. There was no evidence of anything except absence. Earl Foss continued to live on the property. In 1956, he began subdividing the eastern portion of the parcel and selling residential lots. The first house on Spruce Flat Road was built in 1957. The first reported appearance of the barefoot woman was in 1958, 1 year later, at the first house built on Earl's land. I pulled Ruth Foss's missing person file. There was a photograph attached, black and white, slightly overexposed, a woman standing next to a clapboard wall, squinting a little in the sun, mid-30s, light brown hair, shoulder length. I sat in my car in the county parking lot and looked at that photograph for a long time. The woman in that photo was the woman who knocked on my door. Earl Foss continued to subdivide and sell lots through the 60s and 70s. He sold his last parcel in 1977. He died in 1979. Heart failure. He was 78 years old. He died in the original homestead. The homestead was demolished in 1981 by the county after a structural condemnation. Nothing was ever built on that specific lot. It's still vacant. I drove past it once. Foundation slab, some broken concrete, blackberry bramble growing over everything. The ocean was maybe 300 yards past it, beyond the bluff. After Earl died, the woman kept appearing. 1982, 84, 2000. She didn't stop when Earl died. That bothered me. It still bothers me. I went back through every report, every neighbor account, every newspaper entry. I made a list. I was looking for something I'd missed. The man. In the original incident, I saw a man standing at the end of the driveway. I never got a good look at him. Fog, distance, 9 o'clock in September. But I wrote down what I could see. Approximately 6 feet. Lean, dark jacket, hands at his sides, head tilted slightly to the right. Patient. I started cross-referencing. The 1971 newspaper article didn't mention a second individual. Neither did the 67 blotter entry. But the neighbor accounts, the ones people told each other over coffee and forgot about, those mentioned him. Maria Ortega told Dorothy Calder that after the woman left, Maria's husband looked out the back window and saw a man standing at the edge of their yard. Didn't move, didn't respond when Carlos shouted at him. He was still there at midnight, gone by morning. The Callahan incident in 77 or 78. The house that later burned, the story Dorothy heard was that Tom Callahan found a man standing in his driveway the morning after the woman's visit, just standing there. 6 a.m., hands at his sides. Tom went to confront him, and the man was gone by the time he reached the end of the driveway. I tracked down a retired Clatsop County deputy named George Harker, who'd responded to the 1971 call. He was living in Seaside by then, in a senior care facility. I told him I was researching property history. He didn't believe me, but he talked to me anyway. He remembered the call. He remembered the woman was gone by the time he arrived, and he remembered something that wasn't in the newspaper. There was a fella standing down the road, Harker said, maybe 60, 70 yards from the property, just standing there in the dark. I hit him with my spotlight and he didn't move, didn't flinch. I drove toward him, and by the time I got there, he was gone. I asked what the man looked like. Tall, thin, dark coat. He had his head tipped a little, like he was listening to something. Listening to what? I don't know, but I'll tell you something. He looked patient. That's the word I wrote in my notes. Patient. Like he had all the time in the world. same height, same build, same posture, same word patient, used independently by witnesses 29 years apart. I asked Harker one more question. I asked if the man could have been Earl Foss. Harker didn't answer right away. Then he said, Earl Foss was about 60 at the time. This man looked younger, 40s maybe, but he stood like Earl. I only met Earl once or twice, but I remember how he stood, forward a little, hands down, like he was waiting for something to come to him. There was one more thread to pull. I ran a county property search on Deputy Briggs, Robert Briggs, home address, Spruce Flat Road, Lot 9. I didn't even need to check, I already knew. Lot 9, subdivided from the Foss parcel in 1963. Briggs purchased it in 1989, the year he appeared in the department with no prior record. He lived on Earl's land. That's why he turned south when he left our house that night. He wasn't driving toward nothing. He was driving home, to a house built on the same dirt as ours, the same parcel, the same dead man's soil. I tried to find Briggs after that, went to the substation twice. Both times he was out on patrol. Third time, the clerk said he'd transferred to another county. Didn't know which one. I checked every county in Oregon. No department has any record of a Robert Briggs active, retired, or deceased. He appeared in '89, disappeared in 2000. In between, he lived on Earl Foss's land, responded to calls about a woman who'd been dead for almost 50 years, and never once filed an incident report. He already knew the question before he watched the tape, because he'd heard it before. In '62, 27 years before he officially existed. I told Jenny everything I'd found. She listened to all of it. She didn't argue. She didn't tell me I was crazy. She just sat there and was quiet for a while. Then she said, "What happened to the people who stayed?" I hadn't told her that part yet because I was still hoping it wasn't a pattern. But it was. The Callahan house burned down 5 months after the woman's visit. Electrical fire. No injuries, but the family never returned. The Ortegas left within 4 months. Before that, Maria told Dorothy she'd started hearing something inside the walls at night, not knocking, not scratching. She said it sounded like breathing, like the house was inhaling. The 1962 incident, the one I found in the microfiche, was at a house owned by a family named Dwyer. I pulled their records. James Dwyer filed a missing person report in 1963 for his wife. She was never found. He moved to Portland the following year. Same road, same pattern. Every family that stayed in a house after the woman's visit experienced something within 6 months. Fire, disappearance, an event significant enough to make them leave permanently. Every family that left on their own before 6 months, nothing. Normal lives, normal moves, no incidents. The woman wasn't threatening anyone. In 26 years of appearances, she'd never touched anyone, never entered a house uninvited, never raised her voice. She was warning them. Is he still inside? She was asking because she knew what happened when he was. She was checking, and when the answer was yes, when she touched the wall and shook her head and told us to leave, she was telling us what she apparently could not stop. He was already there, in the walls, in the foundation, in the land itself. And she'd been trying to warn people since 1958, since the first house was built on his soil. Jenny and I listed the house on October 31st, 2000. We moved to a rental in Astoria while it sold. It took 4 months. A young couple from Portland bought it. I thought about warning them. I thought about it every night for 2 weeks. I didn't. What was I going to say? A woman who's been dead for 50 years will knock on your door and tell you to leave. The man who killed her is living inside your walls. I didn't have proof of anything. I had microfiche entries and neighbor gossip and a photograph of a woman who looked exactly like someone I'd seen with my own eyes 47 years after she vanished. That's not evidence. That's the kind of thing that gets you a concerned look from a doctor. So I did what everyone else did. I kept the folder, I kept quiet, and I moved on. Jenny and I left the Oregon coast in 2001, moved to Boise. I kept running cable. She got a permanent position at a dental office. We had our daughter, Megan, in 2002. We lived a normal life. We didn't talk about Spruce Flat Road. We didn't talk about the woman or the man or the deputy who already knew the question. 26 years. I still have the VHS tape. I transferred it to a digital file in 2012. I still watch it sometimes. The woman stepping into frame at 9 p.m. exactly. The way she touches the wall. The way she looks past the camera at the end, back toward the road. And for just a frame, maybe 2 frames, there's a shape at the edge of the driveway. Standing. Still. I've enhanced that section as much as the resolution allows. You can see the outline. Tall, lean, head tilted, hands at his sides. But here's what I didn't discover until 2012, when I had the tools to scrub frame by frame. The tape didn't stop after the incident. The VCR ran all night. I'd never watched past the part where Briggs leaves. No reason to. Jenny and I were inside. Nothing else happened, except something did. At 11:14 p.m., the carport motion light triggers. Nobody went outside. Jenny and I were on the couch. But the light clicks on, and for 30 seconds the driveway is lit. The man is still there. Same posture, same tilt. But he's not at the end of the driveway anymore. He's halfway up, 20 yards from the front door. The light clicks off. 47 minutes later, 12:01 a.m. it triggers again. Closer, maybe 10 yards from the porch steps. Same hands, same patience, 12:38 a.m. The light triggers one final time before the tape runs out. I've never enhanced that frame. I opened the file once and moved the cursor to the 12:38 timestamp. Then I closed the laptop. Because at 12:01, he was already close enough to read the house numbers on the siding. Jenny and I were 12 feet away, on the other side of the wall. TV on mute. He wasn't standing still that night. He was approaching, an inch at a time. The way every witness described him, patient. And the only thing between him and our living room was a wall that Ruth Foss had already touched and shaken her head at. 26 years I kept that folder. It has photocopies of newspaper entries, printouts of property records, handwritten notes from my conversations with Dorothy Calder and George Harker, and a copy of Ruth Foss's photograph. I kept it in a filing cabinet in the garage. I never added to it. I never showed it to anyone. Until 3 weeks ago. My daughter Megan is 24 now. Last year she married a man named Cole. Good kid. They bought their first house together in January, a 2-bedroom cottage on Otter Creek Road, 19 miles south of Westport, Washington, Pacific Coast. She was excited. First house, first year of marriage, same place in life Jenny and I were in when we moved to Spruce Flat Road. I noticed the similarity. I didn't say anything. 3 weeks ago, a Tuesday. Megan called me at 9:14 p.m. She was laughing a little, that specific laugh people have when something is strange enough to be funny, but they haven't processed it past the surface yet. "Dad, you're not going to believe this. The weirdest thing just happened." A woman knocked on her door at 9 o'clock. Barefoot, no pants, clean feet, gray sweatshirt, mid-30s, light brown hair, calm voice, terrified eyes. She asked Megan a question. "Is he still inside?" I didn't say anything for a long time. Megan was still talking, saying how the woman left before Cole could come to the door, saying it was probably drugs or a mental health thing, saying she was going to call the non-emergency line. I didn't hear most of it. I was standing in my kitchen in Boise, gripping the counter, and the floor felt like it was tilting. "Megan," I said. "What did she look like?" "Exactly." Megan described her. Mid-30s, light brown hair, shoulder length, gray pullover, clean bare feet, no visible injuries. She looked like she'd gotten dressed quickly but carefully. Same woman, 66 years after Ruth Foss disappeared, 430 miles from Spruce Flat Road. The same woman, the same age, the same clothes, the same question. I told Megan to leave the house. She laughed again and said I was overreacting. I told her I wasn't laughing. I told her to pack a bag for her and Cole and to drive to a hotel and to do it right now. Something in my voice must have landed because she stopped laughing. They left that night. The next morning, I pulled up the Grays Harbor County Assessor's website. Megan's property, Otter Creek Road, Lot 16, built in 2009. Previous structure demolished in 1995. I ran the lot history. The lot was platted in 1964. Original seller, Foss Coastal Holdings, LLC. I'd never heard that name, but I recognized it. I spent 2 days tracing the corporate records. Foss Coastal Holdings was registered in Washington State in 1961. It acquired 6 parcels of coastal land between 1961 and 1973. The registered agent for the company was a law firm in Aberdeen. The law firm closed in 1982. But the corporate registration listed the sole member of Foss Coastal Holdings, Earl Foss. 314 acres in Oregon wasn't enough. He'd bought land in Washington, too. Different state, different county, different road, same soil, his soil. The land he owned and sold and subdivided for other people to build on. Megan's house was built on a lot that Earl Foss had owned. 430 miles from Spruce Flat Road. 61 years after Ruth Foss vanished from a bluff trail and was never found. I told Megan not to go back to the house. She and Cole have been staying with us. She thinks I'm having some kind of late-onset anxiety. She's patient about it, the way you're patient with a parent who's aging in a direction you weren't expecting. She doesn't know about the folder. She doesn't know about Ruth. But I've been watching the Grays Harbor County Assessor's page every day. Megan's property, Otter Creek Road, Lot 16. The listing has been static since they left owner on record, property status, tax assessment, occupancy. Yesterday morning, the page updated. There's a field on the assessor's portal that lists the current occupancy status of a property. When Megan and Cole left 3 weeks ago, it read owner occupied. Then it changed to vacant. That's normal. They filed a temporary vacancy declaration for the insurance, but yesterday, the status changed again. It doesn't say vacant anymore. It says occupied. I called the assessor's office. I asked who updated the occupancy status. The clerk checked and said the update was filed through the county's online portal, using the property owner's access credentials. I told her my daughter is the property owner and she didn't file anything. The clerk said the filing came from the property's registered IP address, from inside the house. I asked her one more question. I asked if a name was associated with the occupancy filing. She read it to me. I'd seen the name before. on a deed from 1923, on a missing person report from 1953, on 6 property transactions across 2 states and 4 decades, on a corporate registration in Aberdeen. She read me the name, and I understood what Ruth had been trying to tell us. He was inside. He always was. And now he's in my daughter's walls, 430 miles from where he buried his wife, 66 years after he died, in a house I helped her choose. I should have stopped there. I should have closed the laptop and focused on keeping Megan safe. But I had the Foss Coastal Holdings registration number, and I couldn't stop. The company didn't own 6 lots in Washington. It owned 31 lots across 3 states: Oregon, Washington, Idaho. 3 lots in Boise purchased between 1969 and 1972. I pulled the transaction chain. 1 lot platted in 1970, sold to a developer in 94, became a residential block on Ridgeline Drive, 4112 Ridgeline Drive, Boise, Idaho, purchased in 2001 by a couple relocating from the Oregon coast. That's my house. I'm sitting in it right now. I didn't leave Earl Foss's land when I moved to Boise. I moved to another piece of it. Different state, different county, different name on every deed between his and mine. Same soil underneath. I have been living on his property for 24 years. Ruth hasn't come to my door. In 24 years, she's never knocked. Maybe she hasn't reached this lot yet. Maybe she came one night when I was gone or asleep, and I missed the only warning I was going to get. Because for the past 10 nights, around 2 in the morning, I've been hearing something in the walls. Not knocking, not scratching, breathing, slow and even. The same sound Maria Ortega described to Dorothy Calder before the Ortegas packed up and left in '84, like the house is inhaling. Jenny doesn't hear it. She sleeps through it. I don't sleep anymore. I have the folder open in front of me, Ruth's photograph on top. She's squinting in the sun next to a clapboard wall, and she looks exactly the way she looked the night she stood on my porch and told me to leave. I thought I listened. I thought I left. But I bought another house on Earl's land without knowing it. And now I'm hearing what the Ortegas heard, what the Dwyers heard, what every family heard in the months before something happened that made them leave for good. 31 lots is what I've found. There could be shell companies I haven't traced, land trusts I haven't opened, parcels in counties I haven't searched. Earl Foss died in 1979, but Foss Coastal Holdings has never been dissolved. Its annual filings have been submitted every year through the present, every one of them signed by Earl Foss. The most recent filing was dated 3 weeks ago, the day after Megan left her house. If you're listening to this, do one thing for me. Pull the lot history on your house. Every property has one. Trace it back, the sellers, the holding companies, the land trusts, the original subdivisions. Follow every name, because Earl Foss bought more land than anyone knew, and the woman he buried 71 years ago is still knocking on doors at 9 p.m., trying to undo what he did. She can't stop him, but she can warn you. She warned me once. I just didn't go far enough. Nobody does. It's 1:53 in the morning right now. The breathing in the walls stopped about 4 minutes ago. That's new. 10 straight nights. It didn't stop. And the motion light on my carport just clicked on. I'm not going to check the camera.